Good morning, everybody. If you had been in Plymouth, England on this date, December 13, in 1577, you might have seen lots of hustle and bustle by the waterfront. And if you had asked somebody, well, who's that guy with his crew? The answer was Sir Francis Drake. And he was heading around the world. Here's a map of Europe in 1600, more or less, and England was not considered a major player, but they will become one. And one of the reasons they do is events that happened during this time period, including those done by Drake. So Drake was born around 1540 in Devon. That's the area in red. And Plymouth at the bottom was his main port. So he went in and out of Plymouth quite a bit. Now, what's the difference between a pirate and a privateer? Drake was a privateer. They're licensed by the government. They are allowed to keep a certain percentage of the goods that they take from whomever they're attacking. They're not totally lawless like pirates. Now, as a young sailor, Drake was involved in the triangular trade, the movement of goods and slaves across the Atlantic, and he was especially focused on Spanish possessions in Central and South America and Florida. And here's a Spanish fort on the coast of Mexico. This was quite violent. There was a lot of fighting between Drake and the Spaniards. He didn't like the Spanish very much. He barely escaped with his life a couple of times. Well, here's our event. On December 13 in 1577, Queen Elizabeth ordered Drake to head to South America, which he did. He left from Plymouth. And then he carried on, ended up going around the world. We think he stopped in North America, where Vancouver and San Francisco are. And he returned to Plymouth 3 years later. Here's a replica of his ship, the Golden Hind. Unlike Magellan, who died on his round-the-world voyage, Drake didn't. And it wasn't long after he came home that he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 1581. So he became Sir Francis Drake, known as a great sailor, but also as a great military leader and a good fighter. So eventually Elizabeth ordered him back to harass the Spanish in the New World. Here's Drake's fleet outside of St. Augustine, Florida, where he was successful in destroying lots of Spanish property. And on the way home in 1586, he stopped at Roanoke Island off the Carolinas to pick up some English folk who were there. And the remaining people disappeared. We still don't know what happened to that settlement at Roanoke Island. It's one of the great mysteries in American history. Well, in 1588, the Spanish were going to invade England. Everybody knew it. So Drake went down with his ships to southern Spain, to Cadiz, where there were some Spanish ships. Not the whole Armada, but lots of them. And he attacked the Spanish fleet here and defeated it to cripple the Spanish invasion. And this is a lot like what Nelson did at the Battle of Trafalgar in the early 1800s, and Trafalgar is right down the road from Cadiz, so you can visit them both in the same day. So the Armada did make it up to the English Channel, and the English allowed the Spanish fleet to get ahead of them because ships in 1588 couldn't turn around very well. So there was a series of battles in the English Channel. Drake was one of the captains. Big W for England and for Queen Elizabeth. And eventually, Elizabeth orders Drake back to the Spanish colonies in the New World, and he gets sick and dies in what is now Panama, and is buried at sea off the northern coast of Panama in full armor, in a lead-lined casket. Here he is being sent overboard, and no one has ever found that casket, but divers still look for it, so maybe somebody will. So Drake's legacy lives on. The Drake Passage is the body of water between South America and Antarctica. The Strait of Magellan is inland a bit. His ship, the Golden Hind, is being restored in London, and it's not far from Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. So if you go to London, catch a play and then walk over and take a look at the Golden Hind. And if you get down to Plymouth, England, here's a statue of Drake. Plymouth was his main port. And he, along with Admiral Nelson, probably the two most famous English sea captains.